Call the meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Yes, Belsley.
Here.
Blunier.
Here.
Dobb.
Here.
Hare.
Here.
Herman.
Here.
Kaufman.
Here.
Rainson. We have a quorum.
Thank you. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have no public hearings tonight and no presentations and special reports. This would be the time for public comment. If there's anyone in the audience that would like to address the board. Hearing none. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to remove anything from the consent agenda? Tonight's consent agenda consists of the approval of the minutes of the meeting of January 16th and the approval of the bills. Any trustees who would like to pull anything from the consent agenda? If not, I'd entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Second.
And second by Sam. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Belsley.
Yes.
Blunier.
Yes.
Dobb.
Yes.
Hare.
Yes.
Herman.
Yes.
Kaufman.
Yes.
Thank you. The village president is not here tonight. He's a little under the weather. So I'm going to, he had one agenda item, the emergency preparedness report. He has worked to assemble an emergency team and upgrade our emergency response actions. And I think he's prepared a pretty in-depth report. So I'm going to pull that for tonight and let him present that when he's feeling better at another meeting. Village clerk.
Nothing tonight, Your Honor.
Thank you. Village administrator.
Nothing tonight, Your Honor.
Thank you. Chief of police.
I have nothing tonight either, Your Honor.
Thank you. Corporation counsel.
Nothing tonight, Your Honor.
Thank you. And director of fire and emergency services.
Thank you, Your Honor. I think one of the things that the mayor intended to mention that I might go ahead and mention tonight
Sure.
was our bus accident response that
Oh,
we had.
of course.
I'm sure you all were well aware of that and saw in the paper, we transported a total of 24 patients, 3 of which were a little bit more critical, and the remainder were 21 were what we would call walking wounded. That does not mean that they weren't hurt, but they were not of a more critical or life-threatening nature. So one of the groups that we did want to thank was District 709, who provided us with a bus. It's a little bit of an unusual way in which we would respond, but it was very effective, and it worked out really well. They got us a bus there really quickly, and we were able to transport all those non-critical patients directly to the hospital. In addition to that, our surrounding departments, including Washington, East Peoria, Tremont, Deer Creek, all responded to that, to the incident. Advanced Medical Transport helped us out as well. They sent 3 ambulances over. And of course our own staff, who did a spectacular job in responding to that. It's pretty amazing that we could take care of and get all those people to the hospital in 45 minutes. That's an amazing feat, really. And last but not least, the police department responded with a number of officers, some of which I think came from the office, and also even some of our public works personnel responded to that. So one of the things that I enjoy most about Morton is that when something bad happens, that we don't always have everyone we need at the fire department, but everyone comes together and works. And so I did want to mention that. Thanks.
Thank you, and a special appreciation to all of you and your departments that responded. And if I understood this right from the emails, Nancy Weigel dropped whatever she was doing and responded immediately with that school bus.
She did.
Special thanks to her and
She
the
did,
school
yeah.
district and everyone involved. Well done.
One group I should mention that kind of goes unnoticed sometimes is our dispatch center, who I can't imagine sometimes how they handle all of the things going on simultaneously, and still, when I call and say I want 5 ambulances, they don't question that. They get us 5 ambulances, and so I did want to add those to the list too of Morton responders who were very important.
Thank you so much.
And again, I'd like to thank the police department. You have to make the site safe for the traffic and everything. I think that's very important, and the dispatchers are underneath the chief, so thank you.
Well done. Okay, let's see. We are going to change the agenda just slightly and move planning and zoning officer up to the next item on the agenda. Thank you for being here tonight, Mr. Spangler. Our condolences on the loss of your mother, and we just really appreciate that you being here tonight for these 2 agenda items. So we're going to move you up so that you can do that, and then feel free to leave if you need.
Thank you. 2 items tonight are recommendations from the Plan Commission meeting from 2 weeks ago. The first is petition number 17-01SP. Kaiser Electrical Contractor, Inc. They're asking for a special use for a contractor facility with outdoor storage related to their business. And basically what they're doing is they're located on Erie Avenue right now. They're going to build a new facility directly south of where their existing facility is. So it'll be pretty much business as usual, just be a new building, a little larger facility for them. It came with a unanimous yes recommendation from the Plan Commission for you folks to approve.
And the special use is just for the outside
Outdoor
storage?
storage, correct.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion or questions? If not, I'll call a vote.
All right. Blunier,
Yes.
Dowd,
Yes.
Hare,
Yes.
Herman,
Yes,
Kaufman,
Yes.
Belsley.
Yes.
thank you. Next item?
Okay, and the second petition is 17-02SP. It's Dan and Christine Neep. They're asking for a special use for an outdoor storage area at their current facility at 340 Detroit Avenue. And there were some stipulations, I guess conditions you would say, that the Plan Commission put on this recommendation that I'm going to give to you tonight, that they would like to see carried through. First would be a new fence shall be constructed around the property, and it's an 8-foot tall fence. And that's not the whole property, that's the property that they're going to do the outdoor storage, use for outdoor storage. The second, the fence must be wood or similar, and it needs to be privacy. The frontage of the property, which there is no landscaping there now, needs to meet the current landscape requirements. And then the next item would be that the gates that go into this facility would be kept closed, and that they would not stack anything in there that would be above that 8-foot tall fence, so that the idea is to keep it screened from view, because it's pretty open from the south as you approach that property. That was kind of the motive behind these conditions.
And what about the parked vehicles in the grass and that sort of thing?
That's not a part of this, but I have addressed that with Mr. Neep, and he knows that he can no longer do that. And I guess it'd be maybe worth mentioning that I talked to some other car dealerships as well, so that it's been an ordinance for a long time. It's not necessarily been enforced, but some of them did it seldom. His was pretty much, pretty much the state of business that he did. It used that grass area, which I'm not even sure all of it is his property, but it's, he understands now that he can't do that. His vehicles that are on display must be parked on pavement, pretty much like you'd see everywhere else.
Okay.
And he knows the routine now, so hopefully going forward, that'll be cleaned up.
Motion?
So moved.
Second? Any discussion or more questions? Roll call, please.
Dow?
Yes.
Hare?
Yes.
Herman?
Yes.
Kaufman?
Yes.
Belsley?
Yes.
Blunier?
Yes.
Thank
all
you,
I
Mr.
have. Thank
Spangler.
you.
Thank you. Okay, Director of Public Works.
Thank you. I have one item tonight. In front of you is ordinance number 16-14. This is an ordinance amending Title IV of the Morton Municipal Code regarding flood damage prevention. I do have a short presentation to give also, if you want me to just go through that first.
Sure.
But basically, this amended ordinance is a requirement of the Illinois Department of Natural Resources in order for Morton to participate in the National Flood Insurance Program. Once approved, we have to submit the signed copies to them as the new Tazewell County floodplain map and study becomes effective on February 17, 2017. I would like to thank Pat for his hard work on this, and Jamie Bullard also. Prior to answering any questions and comments that you may have, though, I'd like to have Jamie come to the podium and work through a presentation that we have. Just briefly, what Jamie's going to go through is the purpose of this ordinance, why communities like Morton regulate the floodplain, the responsibilities that we have, that Morton has to enforce floodplain regulation, and then we've also got some exhibits to illustrate important aspects of the floodplain, and then lastly, we've got some pictures from the rainfall. I'm sure all of you remember the rainfall back on August 30th. We got a few pictures to add to kind of maybe tie it together, just a little more information for everybody. Before Jamie starts, all of you know Jamie, but for those of you out there that don't know Jamie, Jamie is the stormwater technician for the Village of Morton, and he oversees all the stormwater work within the village with myself. He is one of a little over 500 certified floodplain managers in the state of Illinois that we're fortunate to have. So I thought this would be a great time for Jamie to, we'll make it brief, but quickly walk through why this ordinance is in front of you tonight. Jamie?
Thanks. As Craig mentioned, the passage of this ordinance is a condition of qualification for our community within the National Flood Insurance Program, the NFIP. We passed an ordinance, the original ordinance for this community in 1977, and we updated that ordinance in 1988. And so 29 years later, we're getting around to a new set of maps that FEMA has published for our community, and this ordinance is an adoption of those new maps. So back to the purpose here, the fundamental purpose of the NFIP and our community's role in it is just basically to prevent flood damages with our community. They set us about a certain level of standards that we have to implement to be qualified within the community so that we can protect life and property from flood damages. It also prescribes for us the minimum standards that new construction has to qualify for, and we'll get into some of those details here in a little bit. The NFIP is administered by the federal government, and it is basically a subsidy for federal flood insurance. So if our community does not participate in NFIP, people cannot get federally subsidized flood insurance for their homes. Our community has been fairly proactive in the past in controlling and regulating flood plains, and we've done a lot of work to mitigate flood damages that have occurred in the past that might even be in some of people's memories from the past. And a lot of work and money has been spent to that end. So why do we regulate the floodplain? Kind of a summary here: to reduce flood losses, to avoid liability, personal and public, to save all of our hard-earned tax dollars, all the money that people spend for these projects, and to protect people and property. Our community's responsibility lies with this ordinance, and this ordinance affords us the mechanism to act in an enforcement, if needs be, for those properties that are regulated by the floodplain. If you want to turn one more ahead. There you go. Here's an example of the floodplain, a typical floodplain illustrated. And on the screen here, you'll notice the red line is what they call, they have a lot of acronyms in the federal government. they call the BFE, or the base flood elevation. That is the elevation at which the flood waters are expected during the 100-year or the 1% annual chance event. So that's how high the water is going to get in the big rain, the 100-year event. Our community in the 1988 ordinance adopted a +1 FPE, or what's called the flood protection elevation, and that has been the FPE that we've enforced since 1988. Times are changing. There's more and frequent and more severe flooding that occurs. And with this new ordinance, one of the changes we're recommending is a +2 FPE. It affords new construction. That doesn't do anything to the old construction that's already built, but new construction, it affords an extra measure of protection to those buildings being built here forward in the case where the floodplain could change or rise. Next page. So moving forward, this is an example straight from our own community. There are structures that are currently still within the floodplain in our community, and this is an example of one of them. Where Ohio and Ohio Court is, you can see that this is the zone, what they call Zone A, and that the outer limits of this figure delineate where the 100-year floodplain is. And as you can see, these homes are delineated as being within that 100-year floodplain. A good example of this is the picture to the right. That picture is taken from our 8/30 or our August 30th rain event this past summer, and you can see how high the water got up on that bank. Now, as close as we can estimate, this rainfall event was around a 50-year event. So to draw some parallels here, that was not even the 100-year event. That was the 50. You could probably anticipate that this floodplain here that's shown at the 50, as it's shown here, would increase and encroach and probably encompass those homes, as the floodplain maps indeed show. So, next slide. Another example of the floodplain and its limits is just right up the way to the north here. This is Polk Street at Bull Run Creek, and here is some pictures of that same event. The water was within about 2 inches of the bottom deck of that box culvert coming underneath Polk Street. Again, this is the 50-year event, not the 100-year event. One would expect that there might be overtopping of Polk Street during the 100-year event, and the flood maps tend to indicate that. So anecdotally, our flood maps are tending to agree with the real-world experience that we seem to have. Next slide. Another example, this is South Oklahoma. This is in the Orchard Hill subdivision, looking southeast from the subdivision. This is the expanse of the detention basin that runs parallel to Bull Run Creek off in the distance. This is Bull Run Creek running around the corner, and we're about in this stretch of Bull Run Creek right here, looking southwesterly. So another example of floodplains, and the reason to regulate and prohibit encroachments within them. An example of this is we don't allow planting or obstructions to be placed within the floodplain, and that's one of the regulatory functions to prevent people from putting things in the floodplain that could either become lodged against a box culvert and cause upstream flooding, or flooding within the floodplain itself. So, last slide. I doubt many people know that the Village of Morton owns one detention basin, and it is at the kind of at the head of Detroit Parkway off of Detroit Court here. This detention basin stores approximately just shy of 1 million cubic feet, 910,000 cubic feet, or 6.8 million gallons if you're into that sort of thing. This detention basin was full and overflowing during that event. That was a 50-year event. And it was engaged and it was flowing over approximately 3 to 4 inches deep over the overflow weir. So it was doing its job. That detention basin will likely have to be improved at some point in the future to help further mitigate flooding. But that's an example of one of the ways in which we provide flood control within our floodplain. So that's all I have.
All right, thank you,
And that's
Jamie.
right behind the soccer field.
That is correct.
Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you.
So hopefully that was brief enough, but we thought we'd give a little bit of a summary as to what we see, what the ordinance is and what we have to deal with day to day. The tough thing for us is, all the good ground's, getting developed. So we are going to continue to encroach upon these things as we go forward, and we do from time to time. One thing that I did want to share too with the adoption of this ordinance, we'll continue to work closely with zoning and planning. One thing I did want to add with our GIS mapping system, we're working with DNR and we should be able to get shape files here soon, which will be very nice as people come in for permits. That will be on our mapping system, so we'll be able to tell. But we'll want to work with Randy and Roger and figure out how maybe we can incorporate something on the actual permit as a check or something to maybe improve that, just so that we stay on top of this ordinance. One other one is our subdivision ordinance. We typically deal with the 25-year event. So when developers, we got some developers in the room, when they come, one of the tough things is dealing with stormwater detention. Jamie and I like to call it more of a flood control policy, not a stormwater detention policy, because that's truly what we're doing. But on occasions, we have had the developer store the 100-year event for reasons. Orchard Hills, the picture you saw up there, perfect example of why we had them store to the 100-year event, so that we don't cause more upstream flooding as a result. So those are things that we'll be looking even at our subdivision policies, maybe on a case-by-case basis now, but these are things that we need to make sure they go together with our other ordinances. So with that, I think Jamie and myself would be glad to answer any questions that you may have.
I would just offer a comment, first of all, just to, I guess, offer my appreciation to Jamie and Craig for the heavy lifting they do on this. I think a lot of people, including myself, until I really have been involved in a position such as this, doesn't fully understand or appreciate what goes into that, and sort of takes that for granted that, if we don't have any flooding or any problems like that, it's just that happens. And as you can see in the little bit of the presentation and the pictures that we've seen tonight, I mean, there's a lot of work that goes into it to be proactive and put some of those standards in place. And I know from a zoning and land use planning standpoint that sometimes those measures don't go over well with developers, but they're the right thing to do for the community. And in the long run, we can, by being proactive and putting those measures in place and enforcing them, helps to make this a better community for those reasons as well, and avoid a lot of angst down the road. So I appreciate the effort, the work that you do day in and day out that often just a lot of people think just happens. And then the other part of that is, I think as a whole, our public works departments have always been very proactive in, we just talked about the enforcement and the design and the requirements on the front end of it. But then once we have these locations identified, the other challenge is just keeping them maintained, so that when these events do occur, we're not out there, it defeats the whole purpose of designing them and putting them in place if they're not maintained. And then when the storms do occur, we end up with just as bigger mess or worse. So there's always, it's an ongoing thing. It's a two-prong approach from the ordinance, from the enforcement standpoint, but then also just the maintenance. And it's a big job. It's a big task, but it certainly has paid dividends for us as a community. So just want to acknowledge that and thank you guys for your efforts in that area.
Was that a motion to approve?
Sure, certainly.
It sounded kind of like
Yeah,
one.
yeah.
I'll second that.
Any other comments, questions for Jamie or Craig?
Just that Craig called me that day, went out there, I went and looked at that creek on Jefferson, the box culvert, and I've never seen so much water going underneath that box culvert. It was unbelievable in this village, how all that water goes through this town in these creeks. Some of them are designed wider, some of them are narrow, but when that water was coming out there, you just wouldn't believe how strong that was coming out. It was unbelievable.
Yeah, when we get big storms, it's usually me and him running into each other at midnight or whatever to see what's going on out there. And then we'll run into other public works guys too. We've been on a few where pretty uncomfortable, but pulling debris off the top of grates that are under a couple feet of water just to keep things flowing. So
Another example of how our team works in emergency situations. Thank you. If there's no other comments or questions, roll call, please.
Hare,
Yes.
Herman,
Yes.
Kaufman,
Yes.
Belsley,
Yes.
Blunier,
Yes.
Dow.
Yes.
Thank you so much again, both of you. Okay, village trustees, trustee Belsley.
Nothing this evening.
Thank you. Trustee Blunier?
Nothing this evening.
Thank you. Trustee Dodd?
Not this evening.
Thank you. Trustee Hare?
Nothing tonight, Your Honor.
Thank you. I have nothing tonight. Trustee Kaufman?
Just a couple items, thanking the Park District for all the new painting, lighting, curtains in this facility. They've done some remodeling here. And also, a thank you to the Bill Collingwood family. He's our former treasurer, business manager, that's passed away this week. And for over 20 years, he took care of every dime and dollar that went through here. And like when Mayor Durfenler, when he retired, Mayor Durfenler said he made us millions, and I can tell you he did. I mean, when I'd go in and ask him questions, he knew where everything was, and he saved us money and really took care of us for 20-some years. So thanks to the Collingwood family. That's all I have, Your Honor.
Well said. Thank you. We do need one closed session tonight for the purpose of discussing collective negotiating matters between the village and its employees or their representatives. So I would entertain a motion to go into closed session.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion, roll call.
Herman,
Yes.
Kaufman,
Yes.
Belsley,
Yes.
Blunier,
Yes.
Dow,
Yes.
Hare.
Yes.
I don't expect any action after the closed session tonight.